Hey everybody, this is Josh here for the Live the Movie crew. For the moment, how's it going, Eric?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
Pretty good. Hopefully Mallory should be joining us here in a few minutes. Um,
Definitely.
um, I for tonight. Um, the reason why is because I actually just recently picked out a new book, and it's based on it's called Success. That is why you fail where others succeed. And so, if you don't know what we do here, we're called Live the Movie Crew, and that's mainly because a lot of times a movie you find a lot of the characters to be um, of yourself, and so you watch a movie, you see that the main character has some sort of struggle that he has to or she has to deal with. And in order to find the solution, the main character usually thinks that it's going to happen, that the solution is going to come in one sort of aspect. That doesn't end up being the case. They usually have to change something about themselves to make that happen. And so the way we think too is that, you know, life is kind of like your story. Like, you can kind of treat it as any kind of story you want it to be, hero in the end, and changes in your life that that you need to succeed. Is calls and we read a book every month, um, week, just to and have some discussion about what the book is trying, basically the message of the book and all that sort of stuff, and how we can apply it in our own lives, um, to enrich our own lives and make everything better. So we are transitioning to a new, and as I said, yeah, it's called Success: Why You Fail Where Others Succeed. I forget the author off the top of my head. Meurisse. Yet I don't know if Eric's gotten the book yet at all, but and so tonight is a discussion about what we think about the title we said in the past. So I don't know, Eric, did you have anything that you wanted to comment on or something like that?
Well, one of the things I'd start with is that, it's basically the book's differentiating why, other people succeed at something and you fail. Most people, when they think about succeeding at something, the first thing they think about is that they have to find the right strategy, and the right strategy can help you succeed at anything. But the question to ask yourself is, if it's all about the strategy, then why do so many people still fail at a lot of things? Like, I'll take a couple examples. One being, say, weight loss, right? Weight loss, there's a million programs that all work in some way, shape, or form, but yet there's still a big weight problem in our country. Another example would be finances. Finances is actually really easy. It's very simple. You make money, you put a percentage aside, you save for the future, you make a little bit, you take another percentage and you save for the near term. And, you kind of, you pay yourself first so that that you have money for the short term and long term, and then you spend the rest instead of you spend and whatever's left you save. That's kind of the reverse. It's pretty simple, but most people don't execute that. So those two things, for weight loss and finances, are actually two of the most simple things to do, yet most people fail at them. So it can't possibly be just that there's that the people that someone hasn't found the right strategy. The right strategy on how to succeed at those things are literally everywhere. So a strategy might be something that gets you over the top, but there's two other things. And I know Tony talks about these a lot, so I know you've heard this, Josh. But when he talks about what keeps you from a breakthrough, he says there's three things, and one of them could be the trigger to actually a breakthrough. But if you have all three, if you ever looked at a time where you were trying to do something and it wasn't working, or you wanted to do something and you just weren't doing it, and then all of a sudden you just did it, what actually happened? So strategy is one of the three things, but it's not necessarily in most cases the most important one, because like I said before, if you don't have the other two, then you might do something for a while and then stop. So the three things are what's called, they're three S's. So it's actually state, story, and strategy. So your state is your emotional state, right? It's what do you, how do you feel, right? How do you feel? How are your emotions? And most people talk about just their mood, and things kind of just happen. And what you're talking about is trying to be in charge of your state in terms of controlling your emotions through, exercising or breathing right, or reading, or controlling what goes in those ears of yours. So there's state, and then there's story. Now, the real thing is that state and story are actually way more related than strategy. Like, for example, I know this is just one example, but I'm sure we all know people that are, very charismatic, and they used to, be at a bar and be able to go up and approach anybody, right? And then they would just start a conversation. And someone who's more shy would say, how did they do that? Well, the strategy was pretty easy. They just walked up to a person and started a conversation. Well, the difference, though, is why someone would or wouldn't do that is about their state and their story. So, I don't want to get rejected by this person. I don't think they want to listen to me. And what's interesting is how you feel dictates how you talk to yourself, and how you talk to yourself dictates how you feel. That's why state and story are so related. And what's interesting is a lot of times why state and story is so important is because if you just go for the strategy, but you don't actually get yourself in an empowered state, and you don't change the story that you're telling yourself, that's when you get people to try stuff and then quit. And then they try something else and then they quit. It's not that whatever they're trying doesn't work. It's that they don't put real effort into it because they don't believe it's going to work, because they don't believe in themselves. So I'll give you another example. Again, weight loss just ends up being the simplest one to explain. Is all the different weight loss programs, they all work because they all have people that have gotten some sort of results. But the issue is if someone wants to lose weight and keep it off permanently, they have to change their identity. They have to say, I am an energetic person that's vibrant, so not just necessarily like a specific weight, but like saying how they view themselves. So here's what happens. Most people hit a certain number on the scale, and then they say, oh, I need to lower that number. And then they pick a program, which is a strategy. And a lot of times they do lower that number. And you say, well, Eric, if they really haven't necessarily, they changed a little bit, but then they start, eating again, and then they go back up. It's like, well, what happened? Well, they only did it because they were not feeling well and feeling overweight, not because they didn't see themselves as that person. They didn't see themselves as that vibrant, energetic person that can, have the mobility and energy to do, all these things. So, related to this book that we're going to read now is that I think one of the reasons why other people succeed, why, each of us, the person reading the book fails at certain things is, has to do with that. I think we focus way too much on the strategy and not about how do we build that belief in ourselves and simultaneously make sure we're in a great state of mind so that that story continues, and vice versa. They kind of, state and story, I feel like, are almost like a chicken and the egg thing. They both play off each other. When you're telling yourself good stuff and then you follow it up by good movement and exercise and breathing and all that stuff, and then you could probably find a bunch of different strategies to actually succeed at something and continue to get it going. So I'm sure I'll have more input as we continue the call. But when I thought about, like you just mentioned, Josh, the title of the book, and what have we learned that we would think might be in this book, even though we haven't, at least I know Josh and I haven't started yet. We ordered it. That's the first thing that came to mind for me anyway.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I just want to explain state in case you've. So state, when Tony Robbins talks about state, Eric and I have both been to a lot of Tony Robbins' seminars and all that sort of stuff. And so when he talks about state, what he basically means is you kind of state, basically the energy level that you have. So it kind of depends. It's straight, and you're kind of like something that you're more likely to have a better state than if you're kind of slouched down, depressed, all that sort of stuff. So that's what Eric means. And so yeah, so I think one of the biggest reasons why I picked out this book is just because as Eric and Mallory know, I've been searching for a job in higher education for the past couple of years, and haven't really been able to find much that I've been able to do. Probably mainly because I've been working so much at other jobs and doing a whole bunch of different other things. I've started to kind of get the sense that I have complete passion for. So I don't know for sure if it's something that I still want to do. Figure that out and try to figure out, okay, find myself with my passions, and if I find the right thing, happens that education and I get to volunteer a whole bunch of places, enjoying it again and all that sort of stuff, then do it. But if not, then I might go in to do something else. So I don't know what for me right now, but that's kind of what I got out of the title, because a lot of people don't succeed at something. It's just because it's not really like their number one passion, or their number one, like, not like you have to be doing your number one passion to succeed at something. I think a lot of times too, we try to pick out jobs that we like an aspect of, but the job doesn't necessarily match our skills, and so that can kind of lead us in a wrong direction too. Especially since we like to do the things that we're good at. So yeah. So Mallory, if just to kind of get you caught up to speed, we're discussing just basically the title of the next book and kind of what that means to us. Anything to comment on at this point?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the title as you were just talking, because I figured that that's what you were talking about. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, cool. I can hear you.
So it's funny because, the title to me, where it says why you fail where others succeed, I think the biggest thing that a lot of us struggle with is just comparison to others' success against our own success. And I think, if we get too bogged down by comparing ourselves to others, in the sense that, let's say somebody, a good example is the company, that Empower Network that Eric and I were a part of for a little bit. The leaders of our group, I guess you could call it, Rhonda Swan and Brian Swan, they had been at it for a solid number of years. I'm not sure how many exactly, at least 10 in the online business. And for somebody to go in and start to compare their success with their own success. Like if I were to compare my success initially to Brian and Rhonda, who'd been at it and been experienced in that field for years and years and years, it wouldn't make sense. And it can be very discouraging in that sense. So, and I think with social media, it's an amazing resource. And, if we're trying to promote something that we're really excited about or just connect with other people about certain things, it can be a huge tool, a beneficial tool. But in regards to comparing ourselves, I think we tend as humans to attach ourselves to other people in social media and think that, oh, well, how come, they're doing the same thing I'm doing, but how come they're, succeeding at such a high level, when we don't really know their whole story. We don't know how long they've been doing it. We don't know hardly anything except for what they're showing. So I think it's so important to, look at social media as a tool and a resource, and for some who are in business online, but also just if you use social media as a fun outlet to just vent or just to, express your feelings or stay connected with friends, not even just as a business tool. I think it's so important to remember not to compare yourself, because I think a lot of us do that naturally, and it's can be discouraging sometimes if you think you're supposed to be at a certain level in your life. Like for fitness, for example, with Eric's example, if you see if you follow somebody who works out all the time and they're posting about it all the time and they're getting great results and they're posting recipes, it's like you can think, oh my gosh, I'm not like that person. I could never do what they're doing. But again, you don't know their whole story. So I think it's so important to look inward in those situations, which I think was what this book is going to be a lot about, is just, looking at your own strengths and really, exemplifying what you're good at and getting better and improving those skills, and taking your weaknesses and improving on those as well. But really focusing on your own strengths and focusing on what you want from life and the story that you want to create for yourself. And it's so cool that weight loss is such a great example, because to identify as somebody who is fit, healthy, energetic, instead of, even before you get to that point, instead of saying, I'm unhealthy, I eat like crap, I'm lazy, what you identify with is where you'll be in the future and where you'll be today. So I think it's so important to start with your mindset first. Like Eric said, state story before you strategize, which is so cool. I'm glad that I jumped on the call at that moment. But I think, overall, why you fail where others succeed, I think it just has to do with looking within at your strengths and not necessarily comparing yourself to other people's success when you don't know what their full story is, how long they've been doing what they're doing, whatever area of life you're looking to succeed in, that sort of thing. So I think comparison has a lot to do with that.
I also think that many of us, because we are now in this digital age where you hear about stuff so quickly and the news travels and people are tweeting that they saw something happen 5 seconds ago, and people are putting that they're making all this money and doing these things or whatever, is that we all of a sudden think that how long it takes to succeed at things should also condense. And it does for some people, but usually, like Mallory said, a lot of those people either had a background, like they had a background of either trying that thing or something related, and then something just clicked, but you could check that they learned all kinds of stuff, or the person was at just such a place that they had to get out of whatever situation they're in, and they were so open-minded and they just took action. Like when Mallory was talking about Empower Network, when you say the commonalities of people that really succeed at that, I can't say that everybody who succeeded at a high level had a background in online marketing or had been doing it for a long time. But I think the two commonalities are that people were in business or online business for a period of time. They've done a bunch of strategies. And now they've found a company or a strategy that really worked and it kind of took off for them. Or someone was at a place that they really wanted to get out of. This looks like a great opportunity. They were completely open-minded, and they just took action and followed exactly what their mentors told them to do. One thing I will say is, like I said, I think patience is really important. I don't know who first said this quote, but I know if you look it up, it'll say Bill Gates said it, or this guy said it, Tony says it now. And and the phrase is, people overestimate what they can accomplish in a year and underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade. And if you are going to compare, I think a good thing to do when it comes to comparison is, and it's not even comparison, it's kind of like looking at, what can I say to myself that can empower me in this situation to really take action? And you know, an example is, instead of like we talked about Brian and Rhonda before, who Mallory and I know, instead of comparing yourself, say, oh, they're making all this money, they're traveling the world. One of the things I say is, well, what did they do? They worked really hard for a long time. But not only that, but they're in their mid-40s. And I know there's other people succeeding that are 21, but again, I'm using them as an example to try to empower me to take action. Say, well, they're in their mid-40s, I'm 29. I got 16 or 17 years till I'm their age. You know, I could have an entire career in another field, and by that time, everybody might be working remotely if they're doing any job that has to do with the computer. So who knows, 16, 17 years from now, I might be doing what they're doing, even still on my current position or in a different position or something like that. But having built this career, and also having right now, a big focus is obviously for Meg and I to build a family. That's actually the biggest focus. We're still doing a bunch of traveling, which, you know, I still have a couple businesses I run on the side. But the point is that, you know, sometimes when you don't necessarily succeed at something like what Brian and Rhonda was doing, you then get back to the old employee mindset of, you know, hey, I'm going to work at a job for 30, 40 years, and then I'm going to retire and like sit on the couch or something. And one of the people that I follow, and I don't know if you guys ever see any of his videos or something, but I love following him, is Gary Vaynerchuk. And he is really awesome. He's very blunt. He's very open. And he talks about patience a lot. He doesn't just talk about patience. He talks about the fact that, again, talking about people's story. He goes, people have these stories. I saw a video of his last week. He goes, I got people telling me that are 50 years old that they're done. They can't learn this technology stuff. They can't do it or whatever. He's like, if you're 50, you're just getting started. Like, you could have a whole nother career. And that doesn't mean it has to be like a 9-to-5 job. It could be charity. It could be speaking. It could be raising your grandkids. It could be whatever it is. Like, you're just getting started. And then he talked about some of the technology stuff, the fact that we now know how to change people's DNA and add in limbs. And you guys remember that book that we read a bunch of months ago, that all that stuff is coming down the pipeline. And they're talking about people living, you know, at a minimum health, another 30, 40 healthy years. And on the long end, you know, Peter Diamandis talks about people living a few hundred years. And the guy Kurzweil that wrote that book that we wrote, he talks about people living forever. And I'm not saying any of that stuff is necessarily going to happen, but we take this approach to our lives that, like, we're going to do one thing and we either succeed or we don't, and that's going to define who we are and what happened, instead of saying this right now, and then I'm going to, you know, at some point in the future, I might focus on something else. But I think people aren't patient, especially people our age, because they look around at what they're currently doing and say, okay, this is pretty good. Maybe I make some money, but do I really want to do this forever? And it's like, you don't have to play that game anymore. It's not like you show up to the factory at 18 years old and you signed up until you're 65. And there's so much to learn, and technology is growing, and things are going to be much different 10, 20, 30 years from now. For me, I enjoy what I'm doing. We're focused on raising a family. And for me, I'm trying to accumulate as much savings as I possibly can while raising a family over the going to be so much different then, that the opportunities are going to be different, how we travel, how we do all these different things, that I don't spend every day saying, is this my dream job? Do I want to still show up to this job? Am I succeeding at this job? I've kind of mentally said, I'm doing this for a period of time and we'll reevaluate at that time, and everywhere in between is just focused on those things that are important to me. And again, how this relates all the way back to the title is, I don't think we're patient enough, and especially millennials, that being us, is that we're always, not that you can't change jobs or can't do things, but we're always bouncing them out around in our minds, worried that we're going to be like our ancestors and get caught in just, the average life of just chugging along. And I think we just have to be more patient. So that was, that was the second thing that came to mind for me, was to, be patient.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because I think I might have the opposite problem. I'm a little bit more worried about bouncing around all these years and like having to move and go all these different places and do all these different jobs. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just me a little bit. I like what Mallory said too about not comparing yourself to other people, because it's definitely something that I struggle with. I think a lot, and I don't know. It's just been starting to get the sense that I gotta just kind of just figure out how to how to be myself, and not worry about what others think of me, and not worry about oh how much money am I making compared to somebody else. Um, I don't know. It seems like to me that there's a lot of that other people are doing that I might like to do, but I'm just not in the position at the moment to go out and do those things. And I just kind of forget, how important it is, the job that I'm currently doing at the hotel that I'm at, and all this volunteer stuff now that I'm doing for some colleges. Um, I kind of forget how important those things really are. It's hard too, because you tend to think of okay, well, if you start thinking about the whole idea that you take in if you put stock in and say that how others think about you is significant, it's kind of easy to get to this place where you feel like if what was I going to say? This place where you start to base your identity on what others think of you, and when that happens, it's easy for you to lose yourself, and just to kind of that actually kind of causes you to forget how significant you really are. So yeah.
I agree with that. One thing to keep in mind, though, and I would say this about Mallory or myself or you or anyone, is no one's really thinking about you, and that should be a positive thing. And what I mean by that is, it's not that nobody cares about you or cares about me or cares about Mallory. It's when we talk about, when we start to say we base our opinion on what other people think about us, it's probably that one-off comment. It's a comment that someone put on our Facebook page. It's like one conversation we had with somebody. But guess what happened after that person posted that comment or said that one thing to you? They completely forgot about it. So it's actually not what others think of you. It's what you think others think of you. That's what's holding you back. Because anytime I think of an example where you say someone says something like, someone says, well, I don't like having, I'll just give an example. I won't tell you who this is in my life, but someone says, I don't like having people, I don't like having a lot of people in my house because I don't want to show off all the stuff I have. And it's like, okay, well, you don't have to show off all the stuff you have. And it's like, well, I have a question for you. When you go to other people's houses, do you judge them based on what they have? And both answers, yes or no, come back to how you view yourself. Because if the answer is no, then you're literally just talking about the way you view your own stuff. If the answer is yes, then it has to do with judge other people based on that, not that other people judge you based on that. So I would just keep that in mind, that I've had different coaches and mentors and people that have said that to me. It's like, not to burst your bubble, but no one's really paying attention to you, because if you think about it, ask yourself that question: is there anyone or anything, or well, I guess anyone, is there anyone that you constantly spend your time thinking about that you know, because you think about them so much, that directly influences the fact that they feel a certain way. I would say the only people that could possibly be would probably be like maybe a spouse, but again, in a relationship, you still should be able to talk things out and have your own way of thinking and all that stuff. So outside of that, it's probably pretty difficult to have that go on. And if it is going on, you should be able to, it's got to be someone who's so close to you that you should be able to have a conversation about how you feel, so that the interactions with that person, that your significant other, someone you're living with, so that you can improve those communications.
Just to kind of piggyback off that too, Eric, I think a good example is if you imagine yourself going to an event and you walk into a room, and typically if something changes in the room, people will like stop and notice. So let's say you just walk into a room who's crowded with people, all these conversations are happening in little small groups around the room. And all of a sudden, when you walk in, everyone stops because something changed in the room. There's a shift in energy, and they kind of glance over at you and then go back to their conversations, in-depth conversations. Some people can go into that room and that will happen, and they'll think, oh my gosh, they're all talking about me now. They're all thinking about me now. When all that happened was they glanced because there was like a change in energy in the room. They saw that it was, okay, a new person's here. Didn't really think anything more than that, most likely. Went back to the conversations that they were having before. And if you go in that room paranoid that, oh my gosh, everyone's talking about me now, everyone's thinking about me, when it's really not true, that's all in your mind. So that's kind of related to, you know, if you think too much about what other people are thinking of you, the only real person that you're hurting in doing that is yourself, because you're basically just, you're overthinking it. And you got to just learn to find fulfillment in being yourself and being happy with who you are, where you're at, having gratitude for everything that you have in your life, with the goal of, improving and personal growth, and all that is so important too. But patience is so good. That was a good topic that we talked about for a little while. I also wrote down, do you ever feel like you're racing the clock? And I just imagine like having your GPS on and it says you'll be your estimated time of arrival. This happened to me this morning. Your estimated time of arrival is 9:31, and then it slowly changes 9:34, 9:38, and you're like, what? And you try to like race the clock, but what you do and how you feel in that moment is not going to change your time of arrival. What's going to change your time of arrival is outside circumstances that you can't control, traffic that you hit, construction, somebody got into an accident which caused a huge backup. So it's kind of funny if you think about it that way. You're going to get there at whatever time you get there, regardless of what your state of mind is. Why not choose to just let it be and be happy in the moment, and just, everything happens for a reason, which is a huge, that's another mindset thing that you have to kind of shift and understand, and kind of let go of control of other things around you, because you really can't control it. Let's be honest. But it's so funny how some people are just, with that patience thing, it's like they're just constantly racing against something that's just imaginary and made up in their head. It's so funny. When you just can just have this peace over you, that and things start to just come to you. You start to attract good things into your life when you have the mindset of peace in place, and you just choose that mindset every day, no matter what happens, no matter what circumstances you go through. And yeah, you'll get thrown things that can cause that peace to be disrupted, instantaneously, like a death in the family, or happens, or you get in an accident yourself or something like that. But I think it is so important to just understand that you don't have control over everything in your life besides your own, state of mind and your own actions. And if you can get past the comparison of others and racing against the clock and, trying to accomplish everything overnight, you can really find fulfillment. And that's when you start to discover what makes you truly happy. And that's when you can start to succeed at a higher level at those things, because you understand what makes you truly happy.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I was just going to say something and I forgot now. Just lost it. Oh yeah, I was thinking about what you said about like nobody whenever you walk into a room, like everybody turns and looks. Um, they're just noticing that you're there, and then they don't think about it. It's kind of like you got to kind of think of what they're thinking a little bit too. Um, far like if it's kind of normal for somebody to notice another person coming into a room. Um, and the other thing to remember too is that even if you do kind of have like an argument or some sort of confrontation with somebody like that, um, I think they're usually more likely to forget about it before you are. So um, you gotta. I think there was a time I forget when this happened, but there was. I remember one time thinking about I think some sort of conflict that I had with some other person, and I don't remember what it was about at all at this point. But I just remember being like, I just remember at one point just kind of snap thinking that um, this person probably has forgotten all about what the situation has been and all that sort of thing. So what am I holding on to this for? Like it just makes no sense just to be you know upset with this person when they've probably completely forgotten about me, forgotten who I am, forgotten whatever. So yeah, I feel like that kind of gets in our heads sometimes too. Um, so I'm kind of out of things to say at the moment. I don't know if you guys have any other comments or things to say.
Well, I was thinking of an example that would actually relate to what I said at the beginning with the state story strategy, and how they can all relate at once in something very, very simple, and how we can kind of run with all of them in just a way that just doesn't help us succeed. So I was listening to uh, anytime I'm doing work that's just kind of punching things in and whatever, I usually have my headphones in and I try to listen to some of the stuff that we read, not necessarily the book we're reading, but stuff like that. And I was listening to one of he was talking about state story strategy, and he was talking about um, the difference between men and women. I like to use the more like feminine and masculine because people have different levels of energy, and but he uses men and women, and he basically talks about how he asks a single guy. He says, "So, who here is single?" And a guy raises his hand, and he goes, "I'm going to show you why you're single." And he goes over to him, and he goes, "So, you're now dating a girl. You're driving in the car down the highway on a road trip, and a girl says to you, 'Honey, do you have to pee?' What do you say?" And the guy says, "No, no, I don't have to pee." And Tony goes, wrong. And he goes, and he says, "Oh, to all the women in the crowd," they say, they kind of boo him or whatever. And then he kind of catches on, and he says, I think I'm supposed to ask her if she has to pee." And he goes, "Oh, you're a quick learn." And he basically said, when women say something to you, a lot of times you have to kind of investigate and figure out what they're trying to say. And the reason they ask it as a question instead of a statement is because they're trying to figure out if you actually care about what it is that they need. Because if they just tell you, then you don't have to do anything to prove that you actually care, because they've already told you explicitly what it is. So not in every situation, it's not all men and women, but that typically ends up being a situation. So Tony reverses it, and he walks up to a single woman, and this actually, the one talking to the girl actually drives home the point even more than talking to the woman, which is, yeah, that's the author there. But this drives home the point even more. So he walks up to the girl and says, "So you go to a bar, you find an attractive guy, you start a conversation with him. Partway through the conversation, you say to him, 'Hey, would you want to go to lunch with me on Thursday?' And the guy says, 'No.' And then Tony says to the woman, he says, 'What does that mean?' And she says, well, it means he doesn't like me. What else does it mean? He's a jerk. What else does it mean? He thinks he's better than me. I didn't even like him. And then he turns to the crowd and he goes, guys, what does saying no actually mean? What saying no actually means is you are not available to go to lunch on Thursday, which is the actual question that you're asked. So the point was that with the example with talking to the woman, though the woman, after getting the no, made up this story in her head about the fact that he didn't like her and all this stuff when he directly answered a question. On the other example with the guy, he didn't know the strategy of how women think and how they ask questions. Therefore, he created a story in his head that I'm getting in trouble and I didn't even do anything wrong. What the heck? And now his state is messed up. So that was just a quick example of how state, story, and strategy all work together, and how if you're not on top of things or you don't know the right strategy, along with making sure that you don't create this made-up story in your head based on one little comment, how you can get off track. And obviously that applies to other areas of our lives, which can cause us to not succeed as well. So that's all I got.
All right. Well, if anybody else has anything else, we can mention it, and if not, we can wrap up and whatever you guys want. So I'll wait a couple minutes if you guys want to mute your mics. If not, then that's fine. So we normally have these calls on Mondays. We just couldn't do it this week because I know we all had kind of issues to get around. Do we go back to Monday for next week, or ready, or what do you guys want? Monday works? Now Monday works? Okay, great. Awesome. Cool. So I think the other thing I forgot to mention too at the beginning of the call too is that we oftentimes do have little mastermind conferences as well, where we get together for a couple of days, usually at one of our own houses or somewhere local to us, and we get to kind of discuss all this stuff in more detail, and then we get to go see some of the area that we're in at the time, and hopefully soon we should be setting up another one of those. So if this is stuff that you guys enjoy, definitely feel free to reach out to anyone who sent you here. Reach out to anybody that's in the group. Stuff again. The author's name is Tybalt Maurice. You guys see it on the right hand column there. And the book Success: Why You Fail Where Others Succeed. And that's it. So live the movie, guys.
Live the movie. Have a good weekend. See you Monday.
Bye, guys.
Bye.